Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming along. Can we just get a quick understanding of who you are? Can you just put your hand up if you're a self-identified and receive an income for being called a strategist of some type? Great. What about, could you put your hand up if you work in an agency but are not a strategist? Cool. If you're a client or you pay for strategic services? Great. Okay, maybe let's keep your hands up a bit longer. No. Just joking. And and if you're anybody else, please put your hand up. If you haven't put your hand up yet, please put your hand up. Cool. Okay, so mainly strategists, which is good and a nice mix of people. Please, anybody who is on this stage has a need for attention and responds really, really well to positive feedback. So please tweet lots of positive things and use the hashtag #WarkenKhan. And what we are also going to do is vote on who is going to lead strategy into the future and who is the best person to do that out of our 3 panellists. They don't know that. That's only just been disclosed to them now. But who puts up the most coherent vision of what strategy should be about in the future? And as an amalgam after everything they've said, and we'll vote for that. The winner of that vote will get a significant prize. It'll be a book, The Case for Creativity, which will be great. So they'll get that, and also if you vote, you'll be eligible to get a prize as well, which may well be the same book. So before, as you guys are all sitting down, these guys started off by drawing a picture, which I asked them to do, which is the future of strategy. So I'll get each one of them to talk about their picture, and as they're doing it, maybe articulate what they see, where they see strategy heading. Chris, do you want to kick off?
Sure thing.
Oh, sorry. And any questions, just put your hand up, and I'll try to ask. We'll just try to interact as much as possible as well.
Hey guys, thanks for coming along. So I drew the future of strategy on this bit of paper, right? And the future of strategy is a conversation between 2 personas. And this conversation goes along like this, because let's say I'm working with a... Should we do that? Thanks, Debs. So let's say I'm working with a financial institution, and so I say, hi, and this other thing says, hello, and I say, what can you tell me about perceived current financial security across APAC? And the answer is, well, where do I start? Okay, let's start here. And we go, and we go, and we go. That conversation is between me and the internet. The future of strategy is going to eliminate this clumsy, bulky barrier we've got about unstructured data and data being in different places and information being spread out and around in loads of different places and forms and formats. Think about the time we spent just getting all the right data in the right place. That's going to gradually be eliminated. AI, development of data and technology is going to allow us to talk not just to the sum total of human knowledge, but talk to the sum total of human knowledge as it emerges and changes and develops and interacts with humanity. And that is what is going to inform our strategies. Simple, beautiful, elegant, clear conversations between us, strategists, and what we now call the internet.
Sorry, can I ask one question on that? If that's what informs strategy, what's strategy's role?
Oh, it's exactly the same. It doesn't change. Strategy is finding interesting, relevant, and distinctive solutions to the right questions. That's it. Always has been, always will be. Identify the right question and find a distinctive, relevant, interesting answer to it. And go. What is going to emerge is this phenomenally brilliant tool that allows us to do it.
Cool. Thanks, mate. Sandy.
Over to me. All right. Yeah, you can hold it for me. So I'm taking a slightly different approach. I think as we get more and more access to data, more and more knowledge that we can grab onto and hug onto very, very quickly, I actually believe that the future of strategy is going to start to look like a pair of sneakers. which means we're going to have a lot more strategists out there in the real world, looking up instead of looking down at the numbers, looking up at what's actually happening in the real world, listening more than talking, listening more than analyzing, and really taking a look at what we can do for our businesses and our brands to push them forward based on using the data to inform us, but using the real world really to inspire us. So I think the future strategy is a whole load of sneakers, comfortable shoes, unlike what I wear.
Are you being metaphorical or literal? Do you really feel like people, the best place to learn is to go out and actually look at people?
I think we're on that sort of that cusp right now where planners and strategists in particular they're at a dangerous point where they can, no offense, they can Google everything, which means that they can try and find answers that are not necessarily representative of what's happening in the real world. It might be informed by it. It's certainly been, accumulated by what's happening in the real world, but you can't really understand it. It's the difference between knowledge and understanding. And all of the data that we have access to right now gives us incredible knowledge, makes us seem really smart. But to really, truly understand someone and to really understand what we can do to help our clients build their brands and businesses, we have to spend time with real people in the real world. So I'd like to see some of the strategists get back out there, put some comfortable shoes on and hit the streets and really begin to understand what people need to feel, not what we want to learn from them and tell them.
Cool, thank you.
Interesting. So I think I hear a theme around data, and I do like the comfortable shoes. I guess I see the fundamental role of strategy in not a similar way to Chris is really defining crisply the problem that we're trying to solve. I think that that's where it all starts, and I think clarity around actually what is the business problem is probably the number one thing that strategists can help their clients with. I think in terms of taking the problem and then finding solutions, I drew I'm a terrible artist, but drew lots of dots. And I think in today's world, there's more and more data than ever. And I think that the slight twist I would take, I do believe AI will be incredibly powerful. But I think it's actually identifying the specific bits of data that are most relevant to solve that problem. So when I said, okay, what is actually the role of strategists, in addition to crisply defining the problem, I think what they then do is actually structure this chaos of all the dots of the data and actually make it in an organized fashion. They select the dots that actually matter to solve the problem at hand, and then they organize it in a way that actually makes the problem an opportunity and transforms it into a business solution. So that's sort of how I depicted the vision of strategy for the future.
Fantastic. And if we start with the consumer in mind, in this instance, the consumer is really the people who are paying for strategic services. What do you think has changed from their needs from strategy, or will be emerging to change moving forwards that's different to today? Either of any of you?
Agility, and being able to move really, really quickly. What was really interesting about the media Grand Prix this year, the whole thing pivoted on a single tweet from a competitor. So McWhopper, which got the Grand Prix this year, what was elegant about that is that they set that up, they did some stuff around it, and then a competitor sent a tweet saying, no, thank you. The entire thing pivoted, and the strategy went from there. You could scenario plan that, but you couldn't plan that. So what we've all got to be leaning into and doing a lot more of is agility, being able to make quick, right decisions, and then produce really elegant stuff in the world at scale as a result of that.
Can I take a slightly different tact? I think that's excellent work. And I would say that's a tactic as opposed to a strategy, and that there needed to be clarity of strategy that preceded the ability to execute that so brilliantly. So for me, in order to be agile and respond to what real-world inputs are happening, you need to have that clarity of purpose, you need to have the strength of decision-making, and those sort of true north guideposts that allow you to make the right calls in the real time. Because I think that executionally, the world is going more agile, but fundamentally, those strategies need to be the rock, the bedrock on which brands are built.
And given that was why in our work, there was a strategy, but the strategy was multi-leveled. It was multifolded. So we had to plan, the team that worked on that had to plan for every single thing that would take place. Nobody knew how Burger King or McDonald's would respond to that. But they did think it through. And in the end, it actually worked out better because of the way that Burger King and McDonald's responded to it. I do think, though, just going back to your question for a second, One of the things that I think has changed so much from a consumer point of view that is so powerful these days is that, at least when I started in this business, which was quite some time ago, we targeted consumers. That's the language that we use. That's how we looked at people. They were our target audience. We put them into a box. We labeled them. We defined them. We tried to give them, crafty little names to describe who they were, the conscious lover.
Hey, those names were amazing. They still are.
No, they're not. But today I think what's happened is the brands are the target. It's a really, to your point on agility, if you aren't have agility as a brand to be able to move because you are a target, then I think it's the whole world is reversed around. Things have changed, and we have to stop targeting consumers and realize that for the most part, brands can be a target in an instant, in a heartbeat.
And so, what do you feel like is the most pressing need that clients have from strategists now or in the future that they haven't had previously?
I think it's about, it's always about building business at the end of the day. That's our job, is to help build business. So, they need to look at us in terms of how can we help build their business, how can we solve the problems, how can we get to the next level. But I think a big part of that is really understanding not what consumers say they want, because we don't know what we want. I can't tell you what the next car is that I want. I have ideas in my head. But really helping them map out the possibilities and then responding to them as the opportunities come up. And it is really looking for opportunities, and that's what we need to do as strategists, is don't tell them that this is the one thing that's going to help consumers buy your product, but discover those opportunities, grab a hold of them, and have some fun with them in order to engage and to create irresistible connections.
Okay. So far I disagree with two of you. One of you I'm still okay with. Chris, I reckon what you're talking about a lot about in terms of being agile, totally responsive, all of that doesn't belong in the strategy world. That's all reactionary scenario planning at best, but it feels much more executional. Sandy, I feel like going out there into the real world and trying to understand people by observing them is the most inefficient way of learning. And, as I remember as a psychologist being taught, you don't have to have an affair to understand what it's like to have an affair. You don't have to have a death in the family to be able to empathise with somebody and understand what it's like. You just have to be able to get into the mindset and do all sorts of different types of data sources available to do that.
Oh, I so disagree. So disagree. Think about it as online dating. If the first when you go online, I have a 23-year-old daughter who's doing online dating. I don't know why, because she's absolutely stunning and gorgeous, but she started online dating. And I was sitting with her at the apartment one day, and she's going through all of these guys that have reached out to her, and they're looking at the profiles, and she's listening, she's reading all about them and getting some information about them. Then she goes onto Facebook, and she starts, taking a look at them on Facebook, see who their influencers are, what they're talking about, what pictures they're posting, all this kind of stuff. But she doesn't know them. She has absolutely no understanding. She's got knowledge about them, but she has absolutely no understanding of who these people are. Not even on the first date, when she gets to the restaurant and she's sitting down having a cup of coffee with these guys, she won't know them because it's like a focus group. You're sitting there in a sterile environment with a one-way viewing mirror in front of you, judging this person. She will not know those people until she gets to the third date. And that's really about getting from knowledge to understanding. That's about taking it all off, jumping in, getting naked with people, and really spending the time to understand what's important to them above and beyond the knowledge that you have. I think we have to get to understanding. Knowledge is great, but until you understand and you have empathy and you can feel, you won't really know that person.
Okay. Just to be slightly antagonistic again, I would say no matter how many there's many other ways, like asking that person's parents what they're like, or asking that parents, but relying on having an interaction with that particular individual, or having to go out onto the street and observe that particular individual or ask that particular individual what they want, doesn't feel as as beneficial as other data sources, which would be easy to get hold of and quicker and more efficient.
Yeah, but you still only have the data. It's just the data. You have to do it. You have to get out there and feel someone. And I'm a big believer that I can't help my clients build their business unless I can tell them the truth about who their consumers are. And they need to have the data. They need to look at it. They need to have that knowledge. But until you can actually spend time with that person and the people around them, you won't know them. If you were to ask me or my daughter about our relationship, or my son, or any of our kids, you would get a really factual account of it. You spend last week in Provence with all 13 of us, and you'd know the truth real fast.
Cool.
I mean, it's a nice debate you guys are having about where we get data. It's a nice qual versus quant debate. It's fun. It's just what, right? What are we doing? I'm less interested in what. I'm more interested in why. Strategist job, why? Why is that? Wherever the data comes from, if it's more conversational based or if it's aggregated quant, I'm less interested. Why is that happening? Why is that? Why has that changed 27% in the last few months when it only changed 15% in every subsequent quarter in the last 10 years? Why is the only thing we should be caring about?
Okay. And then on that, then why are strategists here? Forget everything, what's our core purpose?
To build business. To build our clients' business.
Yeah, I would say build business, but I think it starts from defining the problem really clearly.
Frame the right questions.
And is the strategist proposition different to the agencies or tech companies' proposition?
I mean, I don't think that we are strategists. I think that what we offer are tools that hopefully enable strategists to be able to do their jobs better. I mean, I don't think that we are out there saying that we are business strategists.
Do you guys feel, does PhD and Y&R have a separate proposition for strategy versus the offering overall?
100% no. No. It's great planning, great thinking is the absolute core of proposition, and we've put a lot of energy into making sure we can do that at scale.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, our job is 100% to build our clients' business and to figure out ways of creating, those types of connections with people that they want more of their brands. They want more of it. The consumers are asking and coming to us and saying, "Can we have more?" So our job is to build a business, and it's not just to build short-term communication platforms. It's about really thinking long-term and being agile, as you say, and quickly responding to what needs the consumers have.
And so can we be a bit more pointed on building the business? Because that's what lead you to business strategist, I guess you'd call that. Might be the realm of McKinsey-esque type of person. Is that the services we're offering here?
Yes and no is the answer. Is my answer to it. Do we do what McKinsey does or any of those agencies? Absolutely not, because they take a hell of a long time, and they often give solutions. In my opinion, I'm not sure if there's any McKinsey people in the room. They give a lot of contextual knowledge, but they don't necessarily take it to the next place in terms of the solutions.
Let's have another framework to explain this.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Let's have another study to explain this. Do I think that agencies are doing enough of it? Not always. But I think that we need to push ourselves to do that, and I think we need to be more actively involved in the business building side of the strategy as we are in the creative strategy. Because at the end of the day, the creative work is irrelevant if it doesn't actually do the job, if it actually doesn't get out there and drive business and build our clients' businesses, brands, and reputations.
And I think we do absolutely need to push to do it where it's relevant and where it's needed. And I think one of the interesting examples, again, that surfaced in the festival was the work that we did for Brutroleum in New Zealand. And that's a really interesting idea. Brutroleum is basically creating petrol from waste brewery output. So the more beer you drink, the more organic petrol we can create. We can save the world, right? So that's a really compelling, brilliant, awesome idea. Is it a business idea? Is it a communication idea? Is it a marketing idea? It blurs. Increasingly, it blurs, and increasingly we're seeing great brands blurring the lines between what is the product and then what is the marketing or communication strategy. And those blurs are great. It's great when you can't tell where a product stops and a marketing campaign starts. And so if we can play a role in helping to land those big ideas with what we bring to the table, then that's great.
I guess what comes to mind when I think about those kind of campaigns is that I think the real distinctiveness that an ad agency can contribute is the understanding of how marketing solves a business challenge. So I think if you go back to the core role of a strategist is to crisply define the business problem, which McKinsey could also do. I think what advertising agencies uniquely do is understand how marketing works to build that. And so when I look at the work that's awarded downstairs, what I always think about is, and why I love being part of the work panels, is you think about who else they have on the roster today. Peter Field, Ehrenberg Bass, and the actual disciplined understanding of how marketing works to build brands. And often what I see that disappoints me around some of the communications that are awarded downstairs is the lack of scale. So Brutonium is amazing, but it needs to actually reach enough customers to actually drive that business result. So it could be an amazing product that drives, and an ad agency could be the one that comes up with the product concept that solves the business problem, but it needs to get the scale in order to drive the results, and I think that's what's unique.
Which is why we rebranded 60 petrol stations and reached like 90% of New Zealanders, and that's why we're now the fastest growing beer in New Zealand from coming from behind. So yeah, it's about going all in, and you're absolutely right, that campaign couldn't and wouldn't have done what it did if we hadn't gone all in and driven that and done that at scale.
So understanding the consumer, really getting out there, really understanding the consumer, kind of putting on the shoes. We're experts at that. We're the number one people to go to for that. We understand the client's business better than anybody. We're business solvers, really understand the business, and we're incredibly agile with data, and we're constantly optimising our campaigns.
Yay, let's go to lunch.
This starts to, for me, be the problem with strategy. It's so nebulous and broad what we're trying to cover off here. And what I want you guys to do is honestly tell me where we should focus and be tight about it. So let's just do one thing really, really well. What is that one thing?
I think you know what I'm going to say.
I want you to say it though, because I reckon that's much better than, yeah.
I think it's, get back into the real world. Get the hell out of the office and spend some time with real people in the real world.
And the value we're then offering to our clients is?
True understanding of what consumers need, not what we want to tell them.
Chris?
The absolute focus for me and it's relevant to where you are, right? A client will answer this differently to someone in a different agency or in a reorganisation. The absolute focus for where we are in PhD, the strategy is about delivering the right solution to the right idea at scale and doing it consistently. I mean, that's what we need to be doing. That is our absolute focus as a media agency. How do we make sure that we're asking the right questions and delivering the right solutions, but doing it consistently at scale? That's the absolute focus, and we've built the infrastructure to do that.
Cool.
I'm not a strategist, so I would just say what I hope strategists do when they work with Google is actually crisply understand the problem and then define how communications and marketing can work to solve the problem. That's ultimately what.
Cool. Are there any questions at this stage from the floor? Yep. Just yell out, I think, mate, it's easier. But say your name as well, if you don't mind.
I'm Alexander. I work in research in the bank, and my question is regarding putting on the shoes. I also feel that we're only looking at research which are flowing in from agencies, research agencies in this case, are not enough. But this data, which is like in scale, it has its credibility among the top management or all decision makers because it's statistics, etc. When you put shoes and go out, then it's all your own, let's say, ideas. And then to keep this credibility, basically, is difficult because,
So I'm just going to paraphrase. So the credibility of qualitative data are brilliant.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you don't need data. I have a data partner who happens to be sitting at the back of the room. I think data is necessary to tell you where you are right now. It's the safety net that really puts you grounded of where you've been and where you're sitting right now. The problem that I have with a lot of data that I look at, aside from the fact that there's so much of it these days, it's just like we're inundated with it, and I have clients that just get paralyzed by it because there's so much they don't know where to turn. the problem that I have with it is it doesn't necessarily give you a sense of where you need to go. And my job as a strategist is to help my clients move forward and to get someplace. And if you just keep your head in the data, you get stuck. You get stuck. So the reason why I think the future for strategy is going to be about getting out there is that we've got to put some balance in place, and we don't have that balance right now. We're hiding behind mirrors, we're hiding behind our computers, we're hiding behind the data, and we're not getting out there and spending time and getting empathy with people.
So what's the ideal structure then? We're now going to get into the more executional elements of strategy of how to deliver on it. What is the ideal structure for a strategy department or a strategy offering in the future?
Yeah, it's a lot more complex than it's ever been, which is actually really exciting for people like me, I think. We have to hire differently than what we've been hiring in the past. Just having brand planners is not going to be enough. We need to have people who do understand data, who can do analytics, who can dive into it and get it simple, because the more data we have, the less simple it becomes, quite frankly. So we need to have those really powerful analysts who can come in and just get to the crux of the problem so that we can start moving forward. I think we need to get people who have a good understanding of social engagement so that we can get that agility and we can respond when we need to respond. And I think we need to get people who can work more as a team as opposed to a single planner or strategist working on a piece of business. You can have a team leader, but you need to have a group of people now to really move it forward. And Mick Whopper is a great example of that. Took a team to do that.
Chris?
The Beresford pub in Sydney, late 2009. We had a conversation at PhD about how we can do exactly that. How do we deliver what we want to do everywhere, all the time, in the right way? And we looked at our planning process. So every agency's got one. It's a great planning process. It's pretty much generally a PowerPoint chart, right? Which don't travel that well, right? So we literally tore that up. And beginning of 2010, we started conceiving an operating system for the agency. So you switch on a Mac, you're using iOS, you switch on a computer, or PC, you're using Windows. When you switch on PhD, you're using Source. So Source is a bit of software, it's our operating system, it works globally, and it's a planning process, but it's also a collaboration framework. So it allows everyone who works at PhD to engage in comms planning conversations wherever they are in the world, and to collaborate to solving those.
If you guys are setting up your own agencies now, how do you structure your strategy department?
If I was setting up my own agency. Yeah, I think it starts with the insights that come from both data and actually getting out there. But I think, so can I just say something about the data question? Mm-hmm. So one of the things about the data question I think is really interesting is that data can be used in two ways. One, it can go rear-facing and say, analyze what happened in the past. But I do think what's powerful today about how data can be used to solve business problems is the future-facing bit. So what I slightly worry about, before we put on shoes and we go out and have empathy with the direct consumer, is which consumer we're having empathy with. Because I think one of the things that data enables is now to find new audiences in ways that we didn't know were interested in our brand. And I feel like oftentimes people get in a rut about who they think their target is. I know target is sometimes a debatable word, but who's the most likely customer for this brand? And I think one of the things that I see working really powerfully when brands use it well is how data can inform a future growth curve, and maybe help inform who you're going to put on the sneakers and go out to see them on the next generation. So that's where I feel like if I was going to start a strategy team, it would all start with that way of actually developing insights. It would probably be a combination of the quantitative bit and the qualitative bit. But again, I do think it comes down to that really crisp ability to articulate what the problem is. And then from there is the launch pad for actually how we're going to grow for the future. So I think the insights would be the core.
So what kind of person is that who can take data and do predictive modelling on it in terms of where the opportunity lies? What kind of, who is that?
I think there's a lot more analytics and statistics that are involved in understanding, huge data sources. And, over time, maybe it's robots and AIs that help us. But, for now, I think it's a lot of ability and comfort with data.
Is that
Numbers.
So is that a data scientist?
Data scientists.
Okay.
I think I've read many reports that say that that's going to be the most kind of sought-after skill set, and all of us who have children should be encouraging our kids to learn about data and get comfortable with data.
Are they going to play a role? That doesn't sound very empathic.
Oh, no, you have to have some of those people
okay.
on payroll. Are you kidding? My gosh. Because I don't want to do it. I almost failed math, so that's why I have Michael back there, so he can do it for me. No, but absolutely they have to be on payroll, and I think we need to get more of them and pay them better, to be really honest, because they are going to give us a good stance of where we're sitting now and where we've been in the past. But then on the same side of it, you've got to get these people who have a perception of the real world, who are looking up and looking around. So it's about getting that balance in place. I think the people you can get rid of is everything in the middle. You know, the PowerPoint people who are sitting there just writing document after document. I think we need to get a little bit on each side of it.
And if you guys could invest in your respective worlds, what would you be investing in now, in terms of what in the world of strategy?
AI.
For me,
Why?
I'm
And can I ask, sorry, why?
Because we're entering an arms race for structuring data, and if anyone in any organization isn't thinking right now about how they can be developing bespoke and custom smart ways of accessing the data as it gradually structures, then you're probably not asking the right questions. And if you don't do that, you're going to be outsourcing it to one or two companies in the world who can currently do it.
Who are they?
The big rainbow and the big blue.
I was going to say, one of the things I'm working on at Google, it actually speaks to what Peter Field was talking about before, is understanding the long-term effectiveness of digital advertising. Because, I think some of his comments he was making about the very short-term nature of creative effectiveness today and the importance of actually being able to measure the long-term impact, I think is super important. It is a really hard problem to solve. And I think actually using AI and a lot of the technology tools, we should be able to help answer that question. So that's one of the things I'm working on with Google. So I think that'll help strategists ultimately be a helpful tool.
And actually, just when I say that, it might be that you don't hire a team of coders and start developing AI, right? But Kevin Kelly, who was speaking yesterday, has the most genius analogy to understand artificial intelligence. It's going to be like electricity. So imagine our lives before electricity. Imagine all the things we did, all the things we used, and how cumbersome that was. And then electricity came along, and everything got better. Everything got faster. Take X, add electricity, and we have these amazing tools. Exactly the same thing is going to happen. Right now, we're in this era where we're dealing with gasoline lamps and all of that. AI is going to come along, and it's going to be like electrifying everything we do. There's going to be whole products that exist because of it. So take your business, add AI, and work out what you get as a result of that.
So Andy, where would you be investing?
I'd almost the opposite in some ways. I'd be investing in people. I think we need to, as strategists in the advertising world, in the industry that we're in, I think we need to get fewer, better people. I think we need to pay them a shit lot more, frankly. I think we need to put value behind it so that they're solving the right problems, to your point, and that they can get out there and have the agility that we need to have to respond to the real world and what's happening. And as new products come and, we go from kerosene to electricity, you've got to have the right people and the right capabilities to be able to jump on that, not be afraid of it, and go, shit, let's go make something with it. And that's what I want to see. That's what I'd be investing in, people who get excited by that.
And what do your clients want more of from your strategists?
I'll be really honest with this answer because I think I don't know how many clients there are in the room. You may not like what I'm about to say. I don't think clients know what they want from their strategists. I think they want them to be in the room as a piece of reason, as a voice, as a knowledgeable person. I don't think they know what they can actually get from us. And the problem that we have with strategy in the world that I live in is that we give it away for free. Yeah. And as soon as you give it away for free, it doesn't have a value. So if I was to run an agency today, I'd start charging a shitload of money for strategy. I'd take a lot less off the payroll for account management, and I'd really push the creative product to the point where there's some rules and regulations to allow it to play instead of being boxed in. So I don't think the clients that I see these days understand what they can get above and beyond a researcher.
Right. And so maybe what they want is a little bit of clarity in terms of what you're offering, what the industry is offering from.
And a lot of honesty and truth as well. I think sometimes we're guilty of playing a little bit to the crowd, and I think that what clients need more of is a lot of honesty and calling stuff as we see it.
Oh, I can't tell you. One of the things that bothers me the most is when I see a really good strategist say what a client wants to hear. Bothers me the most. I want the strategists that we have working at our companies to tell the truth and not be afraid of telling the truth, because they cannot build their business if they don't hear the truth about what's happening, what the data's saying, and what real people need. And unfortunately, I think it becomes this intellectual exercise that really doesn't always help move our brands forward.
And also an informed point of view. I think increasingly it's one of the scarcest resources on the planet. Points of view are 10 a penny. An informed point of view, an incredible point of view, a credible one, is increasingly rare. That's what clients want and need more of.
The worst bit of advice you've ever received? My planning director boss once said to me, rule number 1, don't get in the way. And then once you've worked out how to do that, then try to add value. I still don't know how that sits with me. And I don't proffer that as advice to anyone here.
Now, I think I remember a time in my career, it was very early on at another agency, and I remember our CEO coming to me and saying, Sandy, whatever you do, write a presentation that will sell the work. And the client could smell it a mile away. And it was the worst piece of advice that I ever got, because I did it and I felt in my heart that it wasn't right. And I can honestly tell you I've never done it again since. Because you can, a really smart client, a really good client, they'll look at you in the eye and they'll say, do you really believe this shit? And if you don't believe it, then you're doing the wrong thing.
And how do you know, in our future of strategy, when we're going to have all these different data points as well as knowledge and so forth, how do we know what we're doing is the best thing to do as opposed to a good thing to do? So we're very good at making an argument to do something, and no matter what any time you kind of spend some money, there seems to be a pretty positive return. It doesn't really matter that much if it's shit or it's good, as long as you're advertising. How do you know it's the right thing to do as opposed to a good thing to do?
I think that's where I think the data can be incredibly powerful, backward-facing, but it can give you good information that informs where you go for the future. I think that, again, this is where data coupled with AI, actually you can be intelligent about what you pull from the data. And again, I think that where digital has been good on this has been very much in the short term. Is if you're anyone who works on direct response businesses, sort of the immediate response you can get if you're selling concert tickets, and I put this ad up and immediately I know how much income I've generated. I think when it comes to brand building with digital, we've been much less good on that, because we've started to create some signals, like with brand list signals or brand survey signals, where you can get brand awareness, ad recall, favorability, those kind of signals back. But we haven't yet sort of conquered the next generation, which is how do those short-term signals translate into the long-term brand effect? So again, that's sort of one of the areas I think is really interesting to work on.
Yeah, we haven't taken the direct response modelling into the brandy world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, but what we did do is we tried to do that. So when I was a client, people would come and say, we'll measure the clicks to your website. And I always give this example of Vaseline, which a friend of mine worked in the audience, but you would say, well, why do I want to get someone to the Vaseline website? What is that doing for the Vaseline brand? Like, there's nothing on the website that someone wants to see. And so it's really understanding, and so that's why we've already made the leap from brand advertising, measure it with clicks, to brand advertising on the online, measure it with signals of brand awareness, ad recall, favorability, whatever you're trying to do. But I think that's still in the very short term. I think what we need to do is sort of couple that with some long-term modeling about actually what does that yield in 3 years' time, or at least beyond 6 months.
And I think we also have to start measuring for different things. I mean, when you measure things like likability, well, who cares? I mean, it's great to be liked, but the score itself doesn't actually mean anything unless you're doing something with it, unless it's correlating with growth. I think we have to start measuring for completely different things, and the research industry really needs to take that on and say, how can we take a step back from this, relook at what we're doing, and realize that the world's changed, and we've got to start looking at the benchmarks that we've put up there and that we've sold to clients and that we've built our business on. How can we change it? How can we start measuring for the different things in a world that is fundamentally different?
Yeah, I think I get very, very nervous when we start thinking about how can we take all these short-term metrics, all this conversion data, all this click data, and how do we push it further to get long-term measures? I get nervous as hell when that starts to happen. It's kind of, one of the worst things we did was take everything we knew about brands, and then the internet came along and we could measure stuff. And then because we could measure it, we thought that's what we should be measuring. And I think that if we now start taking all this abundant, essentially click data, intention data that we've got, and start thinking about how we use that for long-term effect, I think it's a really, really dangerous place. I think that there's two things to think about. Who's in the category, and what are the current brand perceptions, what's the salience of that, and then you can get more of a short-term thing. But it's a spectrum, and if there was a silver bullet, we'd have it. But do not fall into the trap of thinking that because we can measure something, we should.
Okay, there's 4 people here who you can take hold of and have them in your department. I want you to rank these 4 people, okay? You can have a data scientist, a brand strategist, a comms/media strategist, and a consumer researcher who's got good qual and quant skills. Who's most to least valuable to you?
Most to least.
I just made that question up. Is it shit?
Okay, yeah. No, it's
interesting.
It's not shit, but the titles they've got are just irrelevant, right? I would create a test which established an index of curiosity, and whichever one of those profiled as the most curious, I'd get them in, because curious people who can frame and ask the right questions are the ones that are going to make a difference.
Cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I think depending on the problem, they rank differently. That's sort of where I'm at, is that if whatever the task is that we've got at hand, I would rank their order differently. Probably the one I'd put at the bottom all the time would be that researcher person.
Okay.
Data science, brand strategist,
Comms, media strategist, researcher with qual and quant skills.
Okay, so I'd put the last one last.
Yeah.
I'd put the data scientist probably second. And then I'd probably put the brand strategist first.
Yeah.
Right.
If I had to order it, that's what I would do.
We're going to wrap up very shortly. Any questions from you guys?
Or observations on what you think strategy
Or
is.
observations, or any points of view you want to proffer?
So, strategies mostly been defined as getting the right answers, the right solutions. Do you think you should be going towards asking the right questions, or asking the clients to ask the right questions? Clients are creating briefs, boxing the solutions in already.
Yep.
But if they really start to challenge, not the brief,
Yeah, the world is full of so many shit briefs. Kind of like, do something interesting to get awareness. It's like, no good can come of that. So I think you're absolutely right. You're getting laser sharp on good, right questions. You'll get good stuff out, but so many bad questions in the world.
I agree with you so much. I think there's too much talking at consumers right now. Ask a laser-sharp question that's been informed by the data, then take a step back, remove yourself from it, and listen. Just listen for a change. I was at a talk yesterday with a hostage negotiator, which was really interesting. And he basically said that you have to ask that right question, and then you shut up. Yeah. You sit back and you shut up, because that's the only way that you're truly going to understand what's important to consumers. And I think we're so busy asking questions, that generally speaking, we're asking the wrong ones.
I've been in some client presentations that felt like hostage negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm an ex-planner, and I'm now running an agency. And my wish to the planning community is to never, ever have this conversation ever again. It feels like whenever planners get together, they say, what's the future of planning? What is the future of strategy? What does it mean to be a planner? And I feel like if we spent all of the energy that we spend navel-gazing and debating who we are on our clients' problems and the world's problems, we might solve them a little bit faster. So no disrespect.
Nothing.
Well, who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows the fool? You're here. But yeah, I'm with you. although it is a more complex world and these things, they're big issues, so they're probably worth discussing. Yes?
I wanted to ask, you talked about strategies worth paying for, and I totally get that as soon as you give away something for free, it has no value. But then the flip side is that if you ask clients to pay for it, they might not have a strategy. And I've certainly been in agencies where we know that clients who don't have a strategist on the account are often accounts where we don't do good work or we ultimately lose the business. So how can we make them like that?
A lot of that is in the early negotiations with clients to put more value on it. From when you sit down and do the contract, it's something that the agencies have to be strong enough and brave enough, and whoever's doing those negotiations with the clients to say, we're not going to do work for you unless you have this, and this is what you're going to pay for it, because we're too afraid to, and it's a fundamental problem in our industry right now.
I think that's the right answer, but I think the truth is that a lot of very good agencies do that, and clients still, when it comes to the stump, they don't pay for it. And I think that clients have got to start coming to the table on this, and they've got to start having the internal conversations they need to have to justify internally to their internal stakeholders the value of it. And agencies can get halfway there, but clients have got to make the case for investing in strategy internally in their businesses. Every business has.
I disagree. I think I'll just be a panelist. I think it's up to the onus is completely on the agency to express the worth of it, and the clients should be trying to get whatever they can for as little as they can. That's their.
And I say if they're not willing to pay for good strategy, they want to have some junior account strategist sitting in the corner of the room doing research, take it away, frankly.
We're going to wrap up. I'm not going to do the vote because I think it's really unless you all want me to, no. Okay, I won't do the vote. It's a kind of a weird thing to do. I remember when I was studying psychology, there was a phrase which was the biggest predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour, and so you could always judge by what somebody's going to do by what they have done in the past. And I always thought coming into marketing when I was a clinical psychologist, it would be really sciencey and would really be able to understand consumer behaviour and be predictive in how we were going to do things. And I'm still, and maybe it's just that I'm doing it badly, but I'm just still amazed at how little we know and how little we can predict the future. It's back to that kind of conversation around understanding all of it, to not understand consumers but understand what they're going to do is still completely lost. And I think the other big issue is understanding what's the right thing to do rather than what's a good thing to do. It feels like still planning is still very much around leading you into a direction. Most directions will lead to growth rather than knowing it's the right direction. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much to our panellists. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you guys for coming along.
Thank you.